Mara's fingers trembled as she palmed the rusted clippers, the metal cold against her sweat-slick skin. The illicit auction hummed around her in the shadowed underbelly of the market district, where the air reeked of rust and desperation. Dim lanterns swung from chains overhead, casting flickering light on the cluster of hollow-eyed humans huddled against the alley wall. Aliens, tall, chitinous figures with segmented limbs and glowing registry pads, prodded at them like livestock, their voices a low buzz of contractual jargon. She'd come alone, blending into the crowd of potential buyers with a forged bidder's chit tucked in her belt. The child was small, maybe 8, his ownership tag glinting like a silver noose around his thin neck. Branded early, the manifest said. Transferred from some off-world labor camp. His eyes met hers for a split second, wide, unblinking, before he looked away, shoulders hunched under a threadbare shirt. The auctioneer, a squat alien with iridescent scales, droned on about the boy's productive yield and minimal maintenance costs. Bids rippled through the group, but Mara waited, heart pounding in sync with the distant thrum of patrol drones overhead. When the price dipped, too young, too fragile, she raised her chit, voice steady despite the bile rising in her throat. 200 credits. He's mine. The exchange was swift, brutal in its normalcy. The auctioneer scanned her chit, and the child's tag beeped affirmatively, linking to her false identity. No one questioned it. In this regime, ownership was just another transaction. She led him away by the hand, his palm clammy and small in hers, weaving through the throng toward the alley's mouth. The clippers burned in her pocket now, a promise she couldn't voice. They slipped into a narrower side street, the market's noise fading behind them. Mara knelt, pulling the child close. "This is going to hurt," she whispered, her voice rough. "But it'll be quick. Trust me." He nodded, jaw set, but tears streaked his dirt-smudged face. She positioned the clippers at the tag's base, where the skin was raw and inflamed. One snip, and the metal snapped free, blood welling up in a thin line. The child gasped, biting his lip bloody, but didn't cry out. Mara pressed a rag to the wound, wrapping it tight. The tag went into her pouch, alongside the charred key she always carried. A twisted relic from her own escape, a reminder of the chains she'd severed. "Run with me," she said, standing. "To the safe house. No looking back." They moved fast, ducking under low-hanging awnings and cutting through abandoned loading docks. The city sprawled around them, a labyrinth of human slums dwarfed by the towering alien spires that housed the ledger networks. Sirens wailed in the distance, routine patrols. But Mara knew better. Varu's enforcers were tightening the noose after the last sabotage. Halfway to the safe house, a low rumble shook the ground. Fire bloomed in the harbor direction, orange flames licking up from the shipping yards. Jory's work. She allowed herself a grim smile. Her ally never disappointed. Jory crouched in the shadows of the dockside warehouse, the acrid bite of accelerant stinging his nostrils. The crates loomed like monoliths, alien shipments of registry components bound for the central ledger hubs. Each one stamped with Varu's seal, a symbol of the Empire's unyielding grip. He checked his timer. 2 minutes until the cell's escape window closed. Revenge tasted like gasoline on his tongue. His family had been scattered in a raid years ago, his parents rebranded and shipped off. His sister Rhea barely escaping with scars that still ached in the rain. Jory built his devices around that pain. Simple but vicious. Incendiary packs wired to motion triggers, fueled by scavenged fuel cells. No grand explosions, just enough chaos to blind the sensors. He lit the fuse with a striker, the flame hissing to life. Backing away, he melted into the fog, rolling off the water. The first crate ignited with a whoosh, flames spreading greedily to the next, then the next. Alarms shrieked, drawing enforcer drones like moths. Jory sprinted for the perimeter fence, cutting through a gap he'd prepped days ago. The fire would mask the heat signatures of the escaping group, Mara and the kid, plus a handful of others they'd pulled from the auction's fringes. By the time he reached the rendezvous point, a derelict tramline overgrown with vines, the sky glowed with the blaze. Mara emerged from the gloom, the child trailing her, his bandaged neck stark against his pale skin. Two more figures followed, emaciated adults, tags freshly clipped, eyes darting like cornered animals. Good timing, Jory muttered, clapping her shoulder. His hand lingered a second too long, a silent check for wounds. That'll keep the patrols chasing shadows for hours. Mara nodded, her face etched with exhaustion. Get them inside. Ria's waiting with the medkits. The safe house was a buried bunker beneath an old human archive, its entrance concealed by rusted grates. They filed in one by one, the child's steps faltering until Jory scooped him up without a word. Inside, the air was stale but safe, lit by flickering bulbs jury-rigged to a solar array. Ria, Jory's sister, knelt by a cot, her own tag scar a puckered line across her collarbone. She took the child gently, cleaning the wound with practiced hands. Mara watched from the doorway, the pouch heavy at her hip. The charred key inside felt like a talisman, but tonight it was just dead metal. We can't stay long, she said to Jory, voice low. Farou's closing in. I need to test something. He raised an eyebrow, wiping soot from his hands. The terminal? She pulled the stolen key from her pouch. Not the charred one, but a fresh duplicate she'd lifted from a low-level clerk. It was unbranded, but if the rumors held, it could glitch the chains. Municipal registry's our best shot. Interrupt one link and maybe we unravel more. Jory's jaw tightened, his impulsive fire flickering behind his eyes. Risky, but yeah, I'll cover you. Dawn broke gray and smog-choked as Mara approached the municipal registry outpost. It squatted on the edge of the admin district, a squat dome of alien alloy ringed by sensor poles. Humans shuffled in lines outside, presenting tags for renewals or transfers. Ghosts in their own city. She'd altered her appearance. Hair cropped short, clothes swapped for a clerk's drab tunic. The stolen key hung on a chain around her neck, hidden under fabric. Jory waited a block away, fiddling with a signal jammer in case things went south. Inside, the air hummed with the low whine of terminals. Alien overseers patrolled the aisles, their multifaceted eyes scanning for anomalies. Mara cued, heart a steady drum. When her turn came, she slid her forged credentials across the counter to a bored human collaborator, eyes downcast, voice mechanical. Tag verification, the collaborator muttered, plugging in the data. The screen flickered, pulling up a dummy record. Mara leaned in, casual. Routine chain check. Got a glitch on a minor property. He nodded, too beaten to question. She waited until his back turned, then slipped the key into the terminal's access port. It clicked home, and the system whirred, lights pulsing erratically. On her screen, a cascade of data scrolled, ownership chains linking thousands, a web of legal bondage. Her breath caught. The key interfaced, injecting a subtle virus, a loop that flagged interruptions, severing digital ties without alerting the ledger core. Test data bloomed, a simulated tag detached, the chain fracturing like glass. It worked. For the child, for the others, this could mean ghosts in the system, untraceable. But alarms blared softly in the back, a subroutine catching the anomaly. The collaborator spun, eyes widening. "What did you—" Mara yanked the key free, smashing her elbow into his jaw. He crumpled, and she vaulted the counter, sprinting for the exit. Enforcers shouted, claws scraping alloy as they pursued. She burst into the street, lungs burning, and Jory's jammer kicked in, drones stuttering midair. They rendezvoused in a storm drain, gasping. "It interrupted the chain," Mara panted, clutching the key. "We can scale this." Jory grinned fiercely, but his eyes held the shadow of cost. One step closer to burning it all. Word spread like smoke through the Undercity. Curfews clamped down by midday. Hollow screens in every plaza flickered to life with Consul Varu's image, his elongated form projected in crisp ritual detail. He stood in the grand atrium of the Central Ledger Tower, robes of woven circuitry shimmering, his voice a calm, resonant timbre that echoed off the walls. "Citizens of the Protectorate," Varu intoned, multifaceted eyes gleaming. "Recent acts of unlawful tampering threaten the stability we have so carefully cultivated. Ownership is not oppression, it is order. To deter further disruptions, I hereby impose sector-wide curfews from dusk to dawn. Violators will face immediate rebranding." The crowd below, humans mostly, forced to attend, murmured uneasily. Varu raised a clawed hand, silencing them. Moreover, public rebranding ceremonies will commence forthwith. Select properties will be renewed in the light of transparency, a reminder of the bonds that secure our peace. Mara watched from a hidden vantage in the slums. Jory at her side, the safe house feeds patched into a scavenged viewer. Her stomach twisted. Varu's philosophy was clinical poison, possession as stability, sentience reduced to assets. But he wasn't wrong about the precedent. Lose the ledger, and the Empire's control frayed. Ria's voice crackled over the comm. "Mara, you need to see this. Manifest just updated." She hurried back. The group clustered around the terminal. The screen displayed the latest transfers, names, tags, destinations. Thomas's entry hit like a gut punch. Her brother, listed as Ines Thomas, age 19. Transfer to Workhouse Alpha 7, effective 3 days hence. Mara's vision blurred. Thomas, captured weeks ago during a raid, his face still boyish in her memory. They'd branded him lightly at first, a warning, but now this. The workhouse, endless labor, breaking bodies for the regime's machines. Jory's hand gripped her shoulder, steady but tense. "We hide the cell. Lay low until—" "No." The word escaped her like a blade. Hiding meant Thomas suffered, became Varu's symbol. Striking back meant exposing them all, risking the safe house, the child they'd just freed. Her flaw burned. She'd cross any line for him, even if it made her no better than an owner, doling out safety like property. The safe house fell silent, eyes on her. The charred key weighed heavy in her fist, a choice forged in fire. Varu's broadcast looped in her mind, the hook sinking deep, the transfer date set, and a promise of public rebranding. Thomas, paraded as the unbreakable chain, a living emblem of what they fought. She met Jory's gaze, calm settling over the storm inside. "We strike the workhouse manifest. Interrupt his chain before they make him a spectacle." The cost loomed. Lives, the fragile network they'd built. But agency demanded it. Humans didn't break easy. They bent the world first. Mara's fingers traced the charred key's jagged edge, the metal still warm from the fire that had nearly claimed them all. She stood in the gutted shell of the safe house, its walls blackened and sagging like old skin, the air thick with the scent of ash and damp concrete. The small cell gathered around her. Jory slouched against a scorched beam, his eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etching lines into his face. A handful of others, faces she trusted but didn't fully know, huddled on crates that creaked under their weight. The cost loomed. Lives, the fragile network they'd built. But agency demanded it. Humans didn't break easy. They bent the world first. She held up the key, its surface pitted and twisted from the blaze. "This isn't just scrap," she said, voice steady, cutting through the dim light filtering from a cracked window. "It's proof. The aliens' chains aren't unbreakable." She moved to the far corner where they dragged in a captured ownership tag, a slim collar from a low-level worker, its chain still humming faintly with the ledger's signal. The group watched, breaths held, as she slotted the key into the tag's lock. It resisted at first, the mechanism grinding like teeth. But then, click. The chain fell loose, the collar's light flickering out. A murmur rippled through the room. Jory straightened, a grim smile cracking his lips. "Hell of a trick, Mara. Where'd you even get the idea?" "From the fire," she replied, pocketing the key. Her brother's face flashed in her mind. Tomas, branded and waiting in some holding pen, his eyes pleading the last time she'd seen him free. This key, born from destruction, was her promise to him. But it only unlocked local chains, the small stuff. The real ledger, that vast alien network tying souls to owners like cattle, demanded more. "It works on these. Means we can free the ones close by, build momentum. But we need access codes to hit the core." Jory nodded, rubbing his scarred knuckles. "I know a play. There's a human courier running ledger updates between the docks and the central hub. Carries fresh codes on an encrypted drive. I can intercept him. Quiet. No mess." Mara's gut twisted. Jory's plans always carried that edge, the kind that left bodies in the wake. He was her rock, the one who'd pulled her from her own branding years ago. But his revenge burned hot. Too hot sometimes. "It's risky. Varu's patrols are thickening. One slip, and we're all tagged." "Worth it," he said, meeting her eyes with that calm intensity that made him dangerous. "Gives us the keys to the kingdom. Literally." She hesitated, the weight of the cell on her shoulders. They were down to 20 souls here, hiding in ruins, scraping for food. Denying him meant stalling, letting Thomas slip further into the system. "Approved," she said finally, reluctant. "But clean. No fires unless it's last resort." Jory's grin widened just a fraction. Wouldn't dream of it. By dawn, they'd slipped out in pairs, threading through the labyrinth of the Undercity. Mara led the recruitment push herself, her hood pulled low against the chill fog rolling off the river. The alien's grip had fractured some human loyalties. Clerks who'd once stamped ownership papers now whispered in shadows, haunted by what they'd enabled. She found the first in a derelict archive building, a wiry woman named Sela, her hands trembling as she sorted faded ledgers by candlelight. "You're out," Mara said, sliding a stolen ration pack across the table. "We can make it stick. But we need your eyes on the system, how the chains link, weak points." Sela's gaze darted to the door. "They'll hunt me. My boy's still listed, property of some off-world trader." "Protection," Mara promised, voice low and firm. "Purpose. Help us cut the ledger, and he's free. We all are." The woman nodded, slow, the fear in her eyes hardening to resolve. The second recruit came easier. Len, a lanky former clerk with ink-stained fingers and a perpetual squint. They cornered him in a back-alley med clinic, where he was patching up strays for scraps. He didn't run, just leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Heard of you?" he said, voice dry. "The ghost who burned her own tag." "What's the angle?" Mara didn't flinch. "No angle, just the end of this nightmare. You know the registry inside out. Codes, overrides. Join us, and you get a new life. No more stamping souls." Len's jaw tightened, a flicker of something, guilt? Greed, crossing his face. "My family's scattered. Wife's in a labor camp, kids with collaborators. You guarantee safe passage?" "Guarantee what we fight for." Jory cut in from the shadows, his tone polite but edged like a blade. "Freedom's messy, but it's yours if you earn it." Len exhaled, nodding. "Fine, but we hit smart. The Ledger House is the heart, surgical in and out." They brought them back to the safe house under cover of dusk, the new blood integrating with wary handshakes and shared smokes. Sella sketched flow charts on salvaged paper, tracing how ownership bonds pulsed through the network. Len paced, muttering about access nodes. For a moment, hope flickered, real, tangible, like the key's click. But the city was shifting. Word came via a runner. Consul Varu had unleashed branded patrols, humans collared and compelled, their eyes vacant as they swept the streets. Mara watched from a rooftop as one patrol cordoned off a block near the river. Scanners humming. Varu wasn't content with chains anymore. Rumors spread of new bonds tied to DNA itself. A single scan, and you'd light up like a beacon. Ownership etched into your blood. It hit close. The safe house routes, narrow alleys, and forgotten tunnels were narrowing fast. One wrong turn, and Rhea, Jory's sister, or the kids they'd sheltered, could end up rebranded. Mara felt the pressure coil in her chest, a war-scarred ache from too many losses. She gathered the cell that night, the air heavier now with the scent of fear sweat. "Patrols are adapting," she said, pointing to a crude map pinned to the wall. "DNA ties mean no more hiding in plain sight. We adjust, scatter if needed." Len slammed a fist on the crate, his face flushing. "Adjust? This is surrender. We strike now, the Ledger House. I know the back vents, the guard rotations. One team plants a disruptor, fries the core servers. It's clean, Mara. Ends this." She met his stare, the fracture opening like a fault line. Len was sharp, useful, but his push felt too eager, like a man chasing absolution. "It's suicide," she countered, calm but unyielding. "Varu's fortified it since the last raid. We lose people, the cell crumbles. Tomas, my brother, he's bait in there. We rush, we hand him over." "And if we wait?" Len shot back, voice rising. The others shifted uneasily. Sella glancing away, Jory's hand twitching toward his pocket. "They brand us permanent. My family, gone. You're hesitating because you're scared of the cost, but freedom's not free." Mara's fingers brushed the key in her pocket, its char a reminder of lines crossed. He wasn't wrong. Her flaw stared back. Protecting Thomas meant shielding everyone, even if it slowed them. But trust frayed here, visible in the averted eyes, the murmurs. "We plan?" she said finally, voice like gravel. "Not charge blind. Jory?" He stepped forward, unfolding a schematic he'd scratched out earlier. "Subsidiary registry first. The transfer hub on the east docks. Handles ownership shifts for half the city. We burn it controlled. Incendiaries in the data vaults, no civilian spill. Disrupts schedules, buys us weeks. Varu scrambles. We slip in for the big one." Len scowled but nodded, the tension lingering like smoke. Mara approved it, her reluctance a quiet storm. Jory's fires had saved them before, but each blaze scarred deeper. Property lost, innocents caught in the heat. Still, it pushed them forward, a tactical bend before the break. As the cell dispersed to prep, Mara lingered, staring at the map. The patrol's net tightened. She could feel it, a noose of alien logic claiming what was human. Varu played the long game, his clinical rituals turning people into possessions, stability through chains. She wouldn't let it claim Thomas, not while she breathed. Len slipped out last, claiming a scout run. In the dim alley beyond the safe house, he paused under a flickering street lamp, heart pounding. The weight of his choice pressed like a collar. His family, wife in the camps, kids hidden with a collaborator aunt, flashed in his mind. Mara's cell offered purpose. But purpose didn't feed mouths or buy pardons. He pulled a battered comm from his coat, thumbing a hidden frequency. The alien liaison's voice crackled through, smooth and emotionless. "Report, clerk." "Routes," Len whispered, glancing back at the safe house's shadow. "They hit the east docks next. Tunnels under the old mill, main path through the sewer grate. In return, my family. Clean slates." A pause then. "Agreed. Extraction at dawn. Do not fail." He cut the line, bile rising. Betrayal tasted like ash, but survival was its own chain. As he melted into the fog, the city's hum swallowed his steps, the fracture in the cell widening unseen. The fog clung to the riverbanks like a shroud, muting the distant thrum of the city into a low growl. Mara crouched low in the underbrush, her breath steady despite the chills seeping through her coat. The crossing point was a narrow spit of gravel and rusted pilings, the only way across the swollen river without alerting the patrols. Thomas was just ahead, his silhouette tense as he scanned the water, the faint glow of his unbranded wrist catching the dim light from the opposite shore. Rhea flanked him, her limp from an old injury making her steps deliberate. While the rest of the cell, 6 in total, including the young recruit Eli, huddled behind, packs heavy with scavenged gear. "Quiet now," Mara whispered, her voice a thread in the mist. She'd planned this meticulously. Slip across under cover of the evening shift change, link up with the safe house network on the other side. Tomas's freedom was the linchpin. Without him, the Resistance's morale would crack like dry earth. She fingered the charred key in her pocket, its twisted metal a reminder of the first tag she'd severed, the burn of plasma on skin. It grounded her, kept the rage from boiling over. A crackle from the comms unit in her ear. Jory's voice, rough from the safe house. "Mara, patrols are light tonight. You've got a window. Get him across." She nodded to herself, signaling the group forward. Tomas glanced back, his eyes wide but determined, the fear she'd seen in him since his capture flickering beneath the surface. He was no child anymore. But the alien system had marked him young, listed as property before he could shave. "Almost there, Thomas," she murmured, pushing through the reeds. The ambush hit like a thunderclap. Branded patrols erupted from the fog on both banks. Figures in reinforced vests, their wrists etched with glowing ownership runes that pulsed like veins. Human collaborators, eyes hollow under the alien tech implants, fanned out with stun batons humming. Shouts sliced the air. "Down! On the ground!" Thomas spun, fumbling for the knife at his belt, but a branded lunged, tackling him into the gravel. Rhea screamed, firing a wild shot from her pistol that clipped a patrol's shoulder. Chaos bloomed. Eli dropped his pack, scrambling for cover as return fire scorched the air. Mara drew her own sidearm, heart slamming, and squeezed off 2 rounds, dropping the nearest branded. But they were too many, coordinated, as if someone had painted a target on this exact spot. Escape formation, she barked, grabbing Ria's arm as the woman staggered, blood blooming on her thigh from a grazing bolt. Tomas thrashed under his captor, kicking free for a heartbeat before a baton cracked against his skull. He went limp, dragged toward a waiting skiff on the river. No! Mara's voice broke, raw. She fired again, but the patrols closed in, herding the cell back. Eli bolted toward the water, splashing in panic, only to catch a stun round in the back. He crumpled, face down in the shallows. They retreated in fragments, Mara hauling Ria through the brush as Jory's voice exploded in her ear. What the hell happened? Mara, report! Ambush, she gasped, lungs burning. They knew. Thomas is taken. The words tasted like defeat, sharp and metallic. Behind them, the patrol's skiffs hummed to life, cutting through the fog like predators. Ria's weight dragged, her wound soaking Mara's sleeve. The safe house was miles away, exposed now. Betrayal hung in the air. Unspoken. Who had sold them out? Len, the quiet scout who'd mapped this route? His absence tonight gnawed at her. By the time they reached the rally point, a derelict warehouse on their side of the river, Ria was pale, feverish. Mara patched her wound with shaking hands, the med kit's adhesive strips barely stemming the blood. The cell was down to 4, Eli lost to the river, his body probably washing downstream by now. Jory burst in minutes later, face smeared with grease from his incendiary prep, eyes wild. They got Thomas, Mara said flatly, meeting his gaze. Ria's sister, his stake in this fight, moaned softly on the cot. Jory's jaw tightened, his hand twitching toward the pouch of homemade charges at his belt. We blow the bridge, he said, voice low, urgent. The old iron one upstream, cut off their pursuit, buy time to regroup. Mara hesitated, the map in her mind unrolling. The bridge was a choke point, vital for supply lines on both sides. Demolishing it would strand the patrols, yes. But it was civilian territory too. Families crossing for work, unbranded kids playing in the shadow of its spans. And Eli. If he wasn't dead, the blast might finish him. Her fingers closed around the charred key again, its edges biting her palm. Tomas's face flashed, branded, paraded. She couldn't lose him to their rituals. Do it, she ordered, the words heavy. But minimize the charges. We can't afford the fallout. Jory nodded, already moving, but doubt shadowed his eyes. He knew her flaw, the line she'd cross for family, even if it scorched innocence. As he slipped out into the night, Mara stayed with Ria, the woman's labored breaths echoing her own guilt. The explosion came an hour later. A deep rumble that shook the warehouse walls, followed by the groan of twisting metal. Screams carried on the wind, faint but piercing. Mara closed her eyes, imagining the young recruit's body caught in the debris, or worse, a mother and child on the span, collateral in her desperation. Word spread like fire through the underground networks by dawn. Whispers in the markets, graffiti on walls. Resistance kills its own. Public trust, fragile as it was, splintered. Allies peeled away, murmuring about Mara's ruthlessness. How was she different from the owners if she sacrificed the vulnerable? Jory returned, soot-streaked, his raid on the bridge a tactical win, but a moral gut punch. Patrols are stalled, he reported, avoiding her eyes. But the city's turning. They say you're no better than Varu. She didn't argue. The fracture widened, her leadership a cracked foundation. Ria's wound festered, infection setting in despite the antibiotics. Mara watched her ally slip into delirium, muttering about the docks where her family had been auctioned off. Jory paced, his impulsive fire barely contained. "We can't wait for your plans, Mara. Tomas is in that transport, heading to the central hub. I'm going after him." "No," she snapped, grabbing his arm. The coordinated strike she'd sketched, hit the convoy at the outskirts, with diversions from 2 cells, required time, precision. Ria's injury had already delayed them. "We do this together, or not at all." But Jory's eyes burned with that old rage, the kind that had driven him to torch alien depots without a second thought. "Your plans get people killed? Like Eli? Like my sister if we don't move." He shrugged off her grip, vanishing into the safe house tunnels before she could stop him. The raid was a disaster from the start. Alarms blared across the comms as Jory's solo charge breached the transport's outer guards. Flashes of firebombs lighting the night feeds the resistance monitored. He fought like a demon, calm and lethal, dropping 2 branded with precise shots before boarding the vehicle. But the exposure was immediate. His comm signature pinged the safe house grid, a beacon in the alien ledger networks. Varu's forces swarmed, tracing the signal back. By midday, the safe house was compromised. Evac sirens wailed as patrols cordoned the district, collaborators kicking in doors. Mara directed the scramble. Ria carried out on a stretcher, the last supplies torched to deny the enemy. They scattered into the undercity, but the damage was done. Jory's impulse had shattered their sanctuary, forcing the cell underground, hunted. When he finally limped back, singed and empty-handed, Thomas still gone, Mara's glare could have melted steel. "You broke everything," she said, voice steady but laced with the dangerous edge that made humans feared. Polite fury, the kind that planned extinctions. Jory met it without flinching, his own moral tangle on display. Revenge over strategy, destruction as catharsis. "Worth it if I got him," he muttered. But the lie hung between them. Ria's transport to a med point had been intercepted. She was in custody now, bargaining Chip for his folly. That evening, the broadcasts hijacked every screen in the city. Varu's clinical face filling the feeds, his elongated alien features serene under the ritual hood. The consul's voice, translated smooth through the implants, carried the weight of legal decree. Order persists through possession. Witness the restoration. Footage rolled. Thomas, bound on a raised platform in the central plaza, the air thick with drone hums and spectator drones. Branded enforcers held him down, his shirt torn open to bare his chest. The branding tool descended, a plasma arc etching the ownership rune into his skin, glowing as it seared. Tomas's scream cut through the audio filters, raw and human, before they muted it. Then the parade. Him marched through the streets, rune pulsing, a living warning. Collaborators cheered, but the crowds were silent, faces etched with the war's scars. Varu's narration layered over it. This one, Tomas Inez, reverts to the ledger. All who defy face reclamation. Stability demands it. Mara watched from a shadowed bolt hole, fists clenched until her nails drew blood. The spectacle wasn't just punishment. It was theater, reinforcing the aliens' philosophy. Ownership as law. Humans as assets. Her reputation crumbled further. Underground chatter branded her a failure, the sister who couldn't save her own. Fear coiled in her gut, not just for Thomas, but for herself. Becoming the monster to match them, crossing into ownership's logic to protect her people. The charred key burned in her pocket like an accusation. Deeper in the broadcast, a figure stepped forward. Len, the scout, his face gaunt under the plaza lights. He extended a hand, offering something small to Varu. The camera zoomed. The charred key, her key, twisted and black. Proof of infiltration, of betrayal sold for survival. Varoo's mandibles clicked in approval, the gesture ritualistic, sealing the collaboration. Rage surged, hot and clarifying. Mara activated the emergency channel, her voice broadcasting to every resistance node. All cells, this is Inez. The line is crossed. Escalate now. Target the infrastructure. Power relays, ledger terminals, transport hubs. No holds barred. We burn their chains, or we wear them. The command was irreversible, a cascade of destruction she'd unleashing. Jory nodded from the shadows, his impulsiveness now aligned with her resolve. Though the cost loomed, more bridges fallen, more lives like Eli's. The safe house lost, Rhea captive. Thomas's rune a fresh wound on the city's soul. And then the announcement. Varoo's voice returned, scheduling the ceremony. A high-profile rebranding, public and grand, to etch Thomas's fate into law. The plaza would fill, the ledger updated in spectacle, ownership reinforced for all to see. Mara's path narrowed to that moment. Destroy the registry, free the branded, or watch her brother become the symbol of their defeat. The fracture in the cell was a wound, but humans mended with fire. Mara's fingers tightened around the charred key in her pocket, its jagged edges a reminder of the first tag she'd severed. From her own wrist, years ago, in a haze of blood and defiance. The cell's dim light flickered as the resistance members dispersed, their faces etched with the fracture Varoo's announcement had carved deeper. Tomas's name hung in the air like smoke, pulling her toward the annex. No more waiting. The municipal registration building squatted on the city's edge, a squat fortress of alien alloy and human desperation, where manifests shuffled souls like cargo logs. She led the team through the shadowed alleys, 3 shadows in total. Herself, Lena from the safe house, a wiry medic with steady hands, and Kai, a former clerk who'd memorized the annex's patrol patterns before the brands took him. They moved like ghosts, boots silent on the cracked pavement, breaths measured against the hum of distant patrols. Mara's mind narrowed to the plan. Slip in through the service vents, grab the transfer manifests, pinpoint the Ledger House wing where Thomas would be held. The key burned against her thigh, a talisman against the fear gnawing at her gut. What if this raid branded her not as liberator, but as just another thief in Varoo's ledger? The vent grate yielded to Lena's tools with a soft scrape, and they crawled through the ducts, the air thick with the tang of rust and overheated circuits. Mara took point, her pulse steady despite the claustrophobia pressing in. Below, the annex's lower levels buzzed with activity. Clerks stamping digital seals, scanners beeping as they logged fresh acquisitions. She dropped first into a dimly lit archive room, the others following like falling leaves. Files hummed in holographic stacks, glowing blue under the low ceilings. Manifests are in Sector 3. Kai whispered, his voice a thread in the dark. He led them to a console, fingers flying over the interface with the muscle memory of old habits. Mara stood guard, eyes on the door. The weight of her concealed blade, a cold comfort. The screen flickered to life, lines of code scrolling, transfer logs, ownership chains linking humans to alien overseers. There, Thomas's entry, provisional hold pending rebranding, Ledger House, East Wing. Her breath caught, a spike of rage sharpening her focus. Got it, Kai murmured, downloading the data to a sliver drive. But alarms whispered in the distance, a subtle shift in the air. Jory's diversion. Mara signaled retreat, heart pounding as they melted back into the vents. Outside, the night split open with fire. Jory crouched in the underbelly of the annex, the fuel lines snaking like veins under the facility's foundation. His hands, calloused from dockyard days, worked methodically, twisting valves, rigging the incendiary pack with wires that hummed faintly in the gloom. Revenge tasted like the acrid bite of accelerant on his tongue. His sister's face, Ria's, flashed in his mind. Her tag scar a map of what the aliens had stolen. This blast would draw eyes, give Mara her window. Collateral? The word soured in his gut, but necessity was a sharper blade. He lit the fuse with a striker, the spark hissing to life, and slipped away into the shadows. The explosion roared seconds later, a thunderclap that shook the ground and lit the sky orange. Flames licked up the annex walls, but the force rippled outward, shattering windows in the adjacent dwellings. Human hovels clustered too close, their thin walls no match for the shockwave. Screams pierced the night as roofs caved, families scrambling from the inferno. Jory's stomach twisted. He'd aimed for precision, but the fuel lines fed hotter than expected. By the time he rendezvoused with Mara at the extraction point, her face was a mask of controlled fury. "You said controlled blast," she hissed, shoving the drive into his hands. The air reeked of smoke and charred wood, sirens wailing as patrols converged. "Worked, didn't it?" Jory shot back, but his eyes flicked to the glowing ruins. A child wailed from the debris, pulled free by neighbors. Lena was already moving to help, but Mara grabbed his arm, nails digging in. "Those were our people. Home's gone because you couldn't—" She cut off, the weight of command snapping her back. "Lives for data." The manifests burned in his pocket now, a Pyrrhic trade. Her moral ground shifted underfoot, cracked like the annex's facade. She turned away, leading them into the night, the key in her pocket feeling heavier, accusatory. Dawn broke gray over the safe house, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and unspoken fractures. Mara paced the central chamber, the downloaded manifests projected on a salvaged holoscreen. The East Wing layout stared back, guarded cells, branding chambers, the heart of Varu's spectacle. But the raid's echo lingered, whispers from runners about the blast's toll. 5 dead, a dozen injured, families scattered. Her authority frayed, eyes in the room held judgment, not just loyalty. The comms crackled then, Varu's voice slicing through like a scalpel. "Attention, unregistered elements. In response to sabotage at the municipal annex, emergency measures are enacted. The elder of the Eastern Safe House, Harlan Voss, is detained for complicity. Public hearings commence at midday to affirm the re-enslavement of all unclaimed assets under ledger law." Mara's blood ran cold. Harlan, the grizzled anchor of their haven, who'd sheltered Thomas after her escape. Varu's move was surgical, twisting the knife of legality. She watched the feed. Patrols storming the safe house perimeter. Harlan hauled out in restraints, his face defiant, but lined with the weariness of too many lost fights. The hearings would be theater, Varu parading violators before crowds, stamping brands to etch obedience into the public psyche. Mass re-enslavement loomed, a wave to drown the freed. Jory slammed a fist into the wall, cracking plaster. "Bastards accelerating. We hit back now." But Mara held up a hand, her mind racing through the manifest's revelations. Neutral authorities, human councils, remnants of pre-invasion governance, still recognized by some alien protocols. A desperate gambit. She activated a secure line to Counselor Ilara, a cautious ally in the neutral zones. "Ilara, it's Mara. We need an emergency accord. Provisional custody transfer for our freed, under your authority. Shield them from Varu's claims." Ilara's face appeared, etched with skepticism. "You're handing autonomy to us? The Council's no resistance cell will enforce rules, Mara. No raids, no sabotage. The words tasted like ash, but Thomas's face in the manifests pushed her forward. Do it. Sign the transfer. It's legal cover or nothing. Her voice cracked on the edge of surrender. Screens flickered as digital seals locked in, the accord binding the safe house's charges to neutral oversight. Rhea, the others, now wards instead of free souls. Mara's chest tightened. She'd crossed her own line, trading raw freedom for a bureaucratic cage. The key in her pocket mocked her. Had she become the owner? Doling out protections like property rights? Jory watched from the shadows. His impulsive fire banked into something colder. As the group dispersed to relay the accord's terms, he pulled her aside into the armory, the room dim with crates of scavenged gear. This buys time, but not enough. Look. He pried open a hidden panel, revealing the cache. Sleek incendiary devices, packed with volatile compounds he'd brewed from dockyard scraps. Dozens, each a fist-sized promise of inferno. Burn the ledger house from the inside. All or nothing. Say the word, Mara. She traced one device's casing, the charred key's echo in its destructive heart. Jory's eyes burned with the same revenge that had scorched those homes, impulsive, unyielding. Her flaw mirrored his, the willingness to burn it all for family, for Thomas. But the Accord's ink was fresh. Autonomy surrendered, moral authority teetering. Conditional, she said finally, voice low. We hit only if the hearings push re-enslavement through. No civilians in the crossfire, and we get Thomas out first. Jory nodded, a ghost of a smile cracking his tension. Green light enough for me. He sealed the cache, the weight of their pact settling like gunpowder dust. By evening, the feeds showed Thomas's transfer. Dragged in restraints to the Ledger House East Wing, his young face pale but unbowed. Varoo wasted no time. The ritual display beamed across the city nets, a grand chamber of polished stone and humming scanners. Tomas chained center stage amid a circle of volunteers, branded humans, collaborators with eyes downcast. Varoo glided in, his elongated form draped in ceremonial robes, voice amplified with clinical precision. Behold the restoration of order, he intoned, a branding iron glowing in his grasp. Alien tech fusing heat with neural imprints, etching ownership into flesh and ledger alike. He pressed it to a woman's arm first, her scream echoing as the crowd in the plaza murmured, a mix of fear and forced applause. Then Thomas, the iron hovering like a taunt. This one, kin to the saboteurs, serves as exemplar. The ledger endures. Defiance brands the defiant. Mara watched from the safe house, fists clenched, the key drawn from her pocket now, its char flaking under her thumb. Varoo's eyes seemed to pierce the screen, a direct challenge. Your move, resistor. The ritual dragged, brands searing one by one, the air thick with ozone and cries. Tomas met the iron's glow without flinching, but his fear was a live wire in Mara's veins. The hearings bled into this spectacle, emergency law invoked, mass claims filed, unclaimed humans slated for auction blocks. Her accord shielded some, but not all. Not Thomas. Not the fringes. Jory appeared at her shoulder, the cache's map in hand. Ceremonies the nexus. East Wing access during the show. We slip in, plant the devices, free him amid the chaos. She nodded, the conditional approval hardening into resolve. But as Varoo raised the iron toward Thomas's neck, a distant rumble stirred. Jory's doing. The first fuse lit hours ago on a peripheral cache. Timed for the climax, it would bloom during the rebranding, flames to greet the brands. He slipped out without a word, vanishing into the twilight toward the Ledger House perimeter. Mara followed minutes later, the team a tight knot against the swelling crowds. The plaza thrummed with enforced spectators, alien enforcers herding humans like cattle. Smoke wisped from the annex's distant scar, a warning of human fire. Her path converged on the ceremony's heart, the key clutched like a weapon. Varu's ritual peaked, Tomas's brand descending, and in that suspended breath, Jory struck the match that would ignite their fracture or their fury. The first explosion whispered from the shadows, a prelude to the blaze that could free them all, or consume the fragile threads of what humanity had clawed back. The first explosion whispered from the shadows, a low rumble that rippled through the plaza like a held breath finally released. Mara felt it in her chest, the vibration syncing with her pulse as she pushed forward through the crowd. The enforcers' grips tightened on their prods. But the humans around her, spectators forced to witness Thomas's branding, stirred, eyes flicking toward the annex's scar where smoke still curled. Her team was in motion now, the knot of them splitting like veins from a heart. Divert them. Mara murmured into the comm, hidden in her collar. Her voice steady despite the churn in her gut. She kept her eyes on the Ledger House's looming facade, its vaulted doors flanked by Varu's ritual guards, their exosuits gleaming under the floodlights. The air smelled of ozone and fear sweat, the crowd's murmurs swelling into confusion. Across the plaza, the diversion team struck. 2 blocks away, muffled blasts severed the power lines. Jory's handiwork, his incendiaries timed to perfection. Lights flickered in the enforcers' towers, then died, plunging sections of the perimeter into shadow. Shouts erupted as alien handlers barked orders, their forms silhouetted against the dying glow. Mara's entry team, 5 hardened souls from the safe house, faces scarred by old brands, moved like ghosts, slipping past the chaos toward the service gates. She led them, the charred key heavy in her fist, its edges biting into her palm. No time for doubt. Thomas was inside, strapped to that ceremonial slab, his brand moments from sealing his fate. The thought twisted like a knife, but she shoved it down. Competence now, calm, precise. Humans didn't break. They bent the world until it yielded. The breach came fast. One of her team, a wiry ex-collaborator named Soren, jammed a disruptor into the gate's lock, sparks flying as it shorted the alien tech. The door groaned open, and they poured in, boots silent on the marble floors. Alarms wailed faintly, but the power cuts muffled them. Mara signaled left and right, 2 to the detainee holds, the rest to the vault corridors. Jory's got the underbelly. We clear the path. Deeper in, the Ledger House thrummed with its own pulse, servers humming behind reinforced walls, the digital chains that bound thousands. They encountered resistance almost immediately, a patrol of 3 enforcers, their visors snapping toward the intruders. Mara didn't hesitate. She raised her pulse rifle, the weapon's hum a familiar comfort, and fired. The first enforcer crumpled, exosuit sparking. The second lunged, but Soren's blade found its joint, and the third fell to a point-blank shot from behind. No mercy here. These were the ones who'd herded her family like livestock. They pressed on, the air growing thicker with the scent of heated circuits. Mara's comm crackled. Charges set. Jory's voice came through, rough but controlled. Igniting in 30. Get the kid out. Copy, she replied, rounding a corner into the central archive. The vault loomed ahead, a massive chamber ringed by data spires, the heart of the registry. And there, in the midst of it, stood Len, her intel man, the one who'd sworn loyalty in the safe house's dim light. He was was at a console, fingers flying over alien keys, but not to help. The screen glowed with transmission logs, data streaming out to off-world backups. Betrayal hit like a gut punch, but Mara kept her face stone. "Len," she said, stepping into the light, rifle leveled. The chamber's guards, Varu's elite, froze, their weapons rising slow, as if the moment hung on her word. He turned, eyes wide, sweat beading on his brow. "Mara, it's not... Save it." She glanced at the overhead cams, knowing Varu watched from his perch. The ritual platform was visible on a side screen, Tomas's form taut under the brand's glow. The crowd outside roared faintly through the walls, the diversions holding. "You sold us." The patrol routes, the vault codes. For what? A clean ledger? Len's mouth worked, but no words came. The guards advanced, prods humming. Mara fired once, clipping one's arm to scatter them, then nodded to Soren. "Take him." They dragged Len forward as the chamber doors sealed behind them. Varu's doing, turning this into spectacle. Hollow screens flickered to life around the vault, projecting the scene to the plaza. The traitor unmasked, for all to see. Len struggled, pleading now. "They promised freedom. Real freedom, not your chaos." Mara stepped close, her voice low but carrying. "Freedom's not a promise. It's a cut." She nodded again, and Soren shoved Len toward the guards. Varu's enforcers moved with ritual precision, their leader, a towering figure in etched armor, drawing a ceremonial blade. The execution was public, brutal. A single thrust through the throat, blood spraying across the console. Len gurgled, collapsing in a heap, his eyes locked on Mara until they dimmed. She felt the weight of it settle, the cost of trust shattered. "He was one of ours," she said to the team, voice flat. "Now he's a warning. Move." The plaza feeds captured it all, the crowd's murmurs turning to gasps. Outside, the diversions escalated, flames licking the power relays, enforcers scattering. But inside, Jory's timer hit 0. A deep thud echoed from below, followed by the acrid bite of smoke seeping through the grates. The incendiaries bloomed, heat warping the air as the vault's understructure ignited. Alarms screamed now, red lights pulsing. Mara's team breached the detainee wing, blasting locks on cells crammed with the branded. Humans marked as property, eyes hollow from years of legal chains. "Go!" she barked, waving them toward the service exits. Tomas was among them, staggering free, his arm raw from the near brand, but alive. He locked eyes with her, a flicker of relief cutting through the shock. "Sis, later." She grabbed his arm, pulling him into the flow. Dozens poured out, a tide of freed bodies choking the corridors. But the vault was fracturing, flames roaring up through the floors, data spires sparking and dying. Jory's voice crackled again. "Archives locked down. I'm holding the route." Mara's heart clenched. She knew what that meant. Pushing through the smoke, she reached the vault's edge. Jory stood there, silhouetted against the inferno, a makeshift barricade of debris propping open the escape hatch. Flames licked at his boots, his face smeared with soot, incendiary packs still strapped to his chest. He'd wired the doors to seal behind the last evacuee, trapping the fire and himself. "Jory!" Tomas shouted, but Mara held him back, the heat blasting her face. Jory met her gaze, calm as ever, that impulsive fire in his eyes tempered by something deeper, resolve. "Get them out. Ria's waiting." He glanced at the charred key in her hand, a ghost of a smile. "Burn it all, Mara, for the owned." The structure groaned, a spire toppling in a shower of sparks. Enforcers pounded at the outer seals. Varu's reinforcements closing in. Jory triggered the final charge, the hatch's props giving way as the last detainees scrambled through. He didn't follow. The doors slammed shut, locking him in with the blaze. A muffled whoosh, then silence, swallowed by the roar. Mara stood frozen for a beat, the key's heat nothing compared to the ache ripping through her. Jory, her anchor, the one who'd built bombs around symbols of loss, gone. Sacrificed for this fracture in the system. She turned, shoving Thomas ahead. Run! They burst into the plaza amid chaos, crowds surging, enforcers firing stun rounds into the throng. The ledger house belched smoke, the registry's core crumbling. Digital bonds snapped, millions of claims evaporating as servers melted, legal proofs turning to ash. Freed humans wept, clutched at each other, but the victory tasted like ash. No records meant no quick reversals, but also no clear lines. Who owned what now? Chaos loomed, riots flickering in the shadows. Varu emerged then, wounded, his arm scorched from a stray blast, exosuit cracked. He limped to a raised dais, hollow projectors flaring to life despite the power cuts. His voice boomed, clinical as ever, laced with that ritual edge. The ledger falls, but order endures. Humans halted, enforcers forming a cordon around the smoldering ruin. Mara pushed through with Thomas and the core team, rifles raised, but Varu's gaze pinned her. You have shattered the chains, resistor. Yet without structure, your kind devours itself. Sign and we impose temporary custody. Guardianship, not ownership. Prevent the void. The treaty scrolled on the hollow, alien drafted, ceding human political autonomy for stability. Mara stared at it, the charred key throbbing in her grip. Her flaw stared back, crossing lines to protect, even if it meant becoming the cage. Tomas squeezed her shoulder, his eyes pleading. The freed murmured, fear edging their relief. Sign, and they ate the alien logic whole. Refuse, and bloodbaths followed. She stepped forward, the crowd holding its breath. Temporary, she said, voice steady, signing with a stolen stylus. The weight crushed her. Moral compromise for survival. Political loss for Thomas's breath. Varu nodded, retreating with his wounded guard, framing it through the feeds. Order restored under new terms. Humanity's guardians ensure the peace. But as he withdrew, Mara felt the shift in her core. Governance she'd rejected, now her burden. Freedom twisted into oversight. The plaza quieted, the smoldering ledger a pyre for what was. She knelt in the ashes, the heat still radiating. Her own brand itched on her wrist, a remnant scar from escape. With a sharp breath, she ripped it free, skin tearing, blood welling, as the crowd watched. The charred key came down, stamping its shape into the cooling soot, a mark of human fire. Tomas stood beside her, the freed gathering like a ragged army. Move, she said, rising, leading them toward the uncertain horizon. Autonomy hung by threads now, sovereignty bartered away. The registry smoldered beneath the treaty's signatures, and Mara gripped the bloody key, wondering if freedom without full claim was freedom at all, or just another brand in disguise.